Hi everybody, it's Richard here again and welcome to another video. Now this is the second in my little series through the years where I pick a year, look through a lot of albums and I pick songs I think could have been and possibly should have been singles from that album. Now some of these songs actually were singles in other countries other than the UK, but it's the UK I'm dealing with. So the year I am picking this time is 1979. Okay, first up, and we have Graham Parker and The Rumour. I think it's just down as Graham Parker actually. The front says Graham Parker, the back says Graham Parker and The Rumour. Now the two singles off this were Discovering Japan and Protection in the UK. However, the US released the track Local Girls, and it really should have been released in the UK as well. It's extremely catchy, very melodic, and very sing-alongable. I'll be saying those words quite a bit throughout this video, but for some reason it wasn't released over here. So Graham Parker and Local Girls. Okay, next up we have Status Quo from the Whatever You Want album. The song I'm picking is Shady Lady. Now this is one of the Francis Rossi songs. Again, it's extremely melodic. The two singles actually released off this album are both Rick Parfitt songs, the brilliant Whatever You Want and the very good Living on an Island. But I think there was room for another one, and Shady Lady for me would have been the choice. So that's Status Quo, Shady Lady. Next up, and we have XTC and their Drums and Wires album. Now in the UK there was only one single released, and that was Making Plans for Nigel. However, in the US, Life Begins at the Hop was also on this album, which wasn't here. But the song I am picking is Helicopter, with its choppy guitars, very melodic chorus, and the almost Beach Boys-esque backing vocals, which is really good. Another contender would have been Scissor Man, but they would have had to cut out the wee dub bit in it. But Helicopter for me I think would have been a big hit single for them. Next up, and we have The Undertones, and this is their debut album from 1979. Now there was two singles off this, Jimmy Jimmy, and then a reworked version of Here Comes the Summer. Now this album was reissued with Get Over You and Teenage Kicks on it about 6 months later. But the track I'm picking is She's a Runaround, which is less than 2 minutes long. That's the only thing that's wrong with it. It's extremely short, but yet again it's an infectious little number, and I think it would have done quite well for them. So She's a Runaround for the Undertones. Next up, and if we have the Undertones, I have to have Stiff Little Fingers, and this is their debut album from '79, Inflammable Material. Now there was two singles off this as well, Alternative Ulster and Suspect Device. Now the version of Suspect Device on this is slightly different to the single version. This is the better version, but there was one song on this album screaming to be released as a single, and that is Barbed Wire Love, which is like a little bit of a throwback to the 50s, but it's done in a punk way, and it's one of the fans' favourites, and it's probably my favourite track off this album. So Barbed Wire Love for Stiff Little Fingers. And then we have actually Slade. Now this is Slade's Return to Base album from '79. Well, they're all from '79. This sold nothing whatsoever, and Slade, they couldn't give tickets away, they couldn't even give their records away. They were really at a low, although this is a really good album. Now there was a couple of singles off this, Ginny Ginny, which is a very basic sort of bluesy Slade type song, a wee bit similar to the Bangin' Man. And the other one is Sign of the Times, which is a decent enough ballad. But there's a track off here called Don't Waste Your Time, Backseat of My Car, which is so unlike Slade, and there's a really good keyboard part in it. It's actually keyboard driven, and it sounds of its time. It sounds contemporary for 1979, and I think this would have given them another hit. Maybe not, top 20, but probably top 40. I think it's a great song, and it's fresh. It did get on the 6 of the Best EP from 1980, but it was tucked away, I think, on the second song on side 2. But Don't Waste Your Time, I think, is an absolutely brilliant song, and it should have been released as a single. Okay, next up, and we have, I show this album an awful lot, it's The Police, Regatta de Blanc. Two #1 hit singles on this, Message in a Bottle and Walking on the Moon. Now, I was going to pick The Bed's Too Big Without You, but it was released later on in 1980 as part of the pack of singles. Although it's a completely different version to this version here. It sounds more like it came from Zenyatta Mandata than Regatta de Blanc, but I'm not going to pick it. I'm going to pick Bring On the Night, which is an absolute masterpiece of Sting. I think it's a really great track, and I believe it's one of his earlier compositions as well, but I think it would have been top 5, and Bring On the Night is my choice from Regatta de Blanc. Okay, and next up we have one of my favourites, Nick Lowe, and this is the Jesus of Cool album, and this really is a rock pile album. 2 singles, The Brilliant Cruel to Be Kind and the excellent Cracking Up. There is one track on here I think would have done quite well, and that is Without Love, which Johnny Cash recorded for his Rockabilly Blues album of the same year, or maybe it was 1980. And it is like a country stroke rockabilly number, and I think it would have done really well. So that's Without Love from Labour of Lust. Next up, we have Dire Straits actually, and there was only one single released off this, and it was Lady Writer, which was quite similar in style to Sultans of Swing. But the next track on the album is Angel of Mercy, and I think it would have done really well as a single. I don't see why they didn't release a second single of it. It's got a very, very catchy chorus as well, and yeah, it's one of their better early songs. This album I think is really good. I think this is better than the first, to be quite frank with you, but it seems to be slightly forgotten about. Okay, next up is Elvis Costello and Armed Forces, and the 2 singles off this were Oliver's Army, which is unbeatable, Accidents Will Happen, which is fantastic as well, and then Green Shirt was actually released about 6 years later to promote a greatest hits LP called The Man. But the track I'm picking off this is Busybodies, which sounds a little bit in the same sort of style as Accidents Will Happen, but I think it's a better song, and I think again it would have been a top 20 hit for him. Accidents Will Happen just managed to scrape the top 30. I think Busybodies would have done better, so that's Busybodies from Armed Forces. And then we have The Clash, London Calling. Many people think this is a 1980 album. It was released in December 1979. One single here in the UK, London Calling. I think Train in Vain was released in America. The track I would have picked for this is the very Bo Diddley inspired Hateful, with his extremely addictive and catchy chorus. I think it's just a really, really good song. It's very fast paced, and I think it would have done really, really well. So Hateful from London Calling, fantastic album. Okay, and I'm going to include this guy Iggy Pop, and this is his New Values album from 1979, of course, and I think this is a really strong album. Now, there was 2 singles off this which did nothing. 5 Foot One, which is okay, and Bored, which again is okay, but the opening track off here is Tell Me a Story, which is the best track on it, and I don't know if it would have hit the charts. Probably not, because by this time Iggy Pop, nobody was interested, but it's got a really good new wavy feel, and I think it's magnificent. And so Iggy Pop's Tell Me a Story from New Values. We now have George Harrison, Beatle George, and this is actually my favourite George Harrison LP, and there was 3 singles off this. Blow Away, which was a very minor hit, Faster, which was okay, it was not bad, and Love Comes to Everyone, which was a decent enough song. But the standout track for me in this is the very last track, If You Believe. I know it's a religious song, but the lyrics could be applied just to a personal relationship, and I think it's an absolutely magnificent track, very acoustic-y and very, very melodic, and it's one of his best. So If You Believe from George Harrison. Next we have The Cars, and this is Candio. Now, I think that the singles off this were Let's Go and It's All I Can Do, which are both brilliant. I'm not too sure if Double Life is a single or not, but the track I'm picking is Lust for Kicks, which has got a keyboard sort of loop in it, which I think is so infectious. And it actually sounds more like something from 1981 rather than 1979. And I think this would have been a huge hit for them. I think it's a really, really good song, really catchy, but was never released. So Lust for Kicks from Candio. A few more to go, and of course I have to show ABBA, and this is the Voulez-Vous album. Now this actually has 5 A-sides on it. The double A side of Voulez-Vous and Angel Eyes, Chiquitita, Does Your Mother Know, and I Have a Dream. But there's 2 other songs on this I think would have made great singles. The one I'm picking is As Good As New. It's the opening track on the album. It's got a real, it starts off with like a string section, goes into a really funky verse, and then one of the catchiest choruses you'll ever hear. I think it would have made a great single. Also, the other track is If It Wasn't For The Nights, which is a classic disco number, and it was originally going to be a single, but they kept holding it back and picking something else, and it never actually got released. So those 2 tracks, but especially As Good As New, I think would have made great singles. And then we have David Bowie himself, and this is Lodger, and the 2 tracks off this were Boys Keep Swinging and DJ, both sterling great songs. I was going to pick Look Back in Anger because it was a single in the US and it's got a really good video, but I'm not. I'm going to actually pick Yassassin because I think Look Back in Anger is more a generic rock song. Yassassin has got a little bit more of an oriental feel. It's a little bit more different. It sounds a little bit Talking Headsy as well. I think it would have been a great single. Now I believe it was a single in some places. I think it might have been Holland, because there is an edited single version on the A New Career, New Town box set. But I think this would actually have done much better than DJ if it had been released as a 7-inch single. So that's Yassassin. And we have 3 more. Susie Quattro, Susie and Other 4-letter words. Now this has got the singles I've Never Been in Love, She's in Love with You, and Mama's Boy. All great singles, but the one I'm actually going to pick here, and I think would have made it been a big hit for her, is actually 4-letter words, which is the catchiest song on the album, and I think it's really, really good. In fact, nearly every one of these songs could have been a single because this is her strongest album. And 4-letter words, you know, for 1979, and it doesn't sound glammy, so it doesn't sound like Susie from 73. It sounds like Susie from 79, and I think it would have been a huge hit, but never released. And then we have Blondie and Eat to the Beat. Now this had 3 singles off it, which were Atomic, which got to #1, Dreaming #2, my all-time favourite Blondie song, and Union City Blue, which is a really good single. But the Motown influenced Slow Motion for me again was an obvious choice of a single. Really, really catchy, but it was never released. There's a couple of other tracks off here that would have done pretty well, but Slow Motion, Debbie's vocals are great on it. It's just such a melodic song, so it gets my choice. And lastly, I'm going to pick this here. I think this is number 19, and it's the Boomtown Rats. And I'm not too sure whether this would have worked or not, but it's my favourite track off the album, so I'm picking it. There was 3 tracks released as singles. I Don't Like Mondays, Diamond Smiles, and the brilliant Someone's Looking At You. But the very last track, When the Night Comes, which I think was the B-side of Someone's Looking At You, I think is great. I love the Spanish guitar in it, really good. And there is a little bit of a sort of a bass line, similar in a way to Rat Trap, which yeah, okay, Rat Trap got to #1, so why can't they do it again? But I don't know, maybe I think this would have worked as a good single, maybe not, but I'm going to throw it in here anyway. So the Boomtown Rats, When the Night Comes. Okay, so that's a look at some of my albums from 1979 and the ones I think that would have done okay in the charts if they had been released, but it wasn't to be. Okay, that's me for now. I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope to have another video quite soon. All the best now. Bye bye.